Alright, what's going on, guys? This is Boxing Genius here, and today we're here to talk about Charlo versus Castano. And this is going to be an audio version. I'm not going to do a film study for this one because there's just too many fucking fights to break down, and there's too many fights to explain at the moment. And compiling all the clips and doing all of these videos where I show you guys the exact clips just takes too much time. Y'all gotta realize that, this is not something that I do full time, so I still do a lot of things. I'm still studying. And yeah, but I'm not here to bitch and complain. We're finna here to do this video, man. I watched 4 fights of, or 2 fights of Jermel and then 2 fights of Castano in order to really see what they are about, okay? Now, for Charlo, I've seen more of Charlo than I did of Castano. I've watched a lot of highlights of Charlo, but in terms of full fights, I've only watched 2 of them, okay? Now, there is a very good similarity between Spence and Charlo in the sense that they are both trained by Derek James, and coincidentally, they both have the hybrid stance. Now, I've talked about this in my video on Pacquiao versus Spence, on my pre-fight prediction on Pacquiao versus Spence, so go ahead and try to check that out first before going into this video. And there I basically outlined the hybrid stance, where basically the left foot is pointed forward, or the lead foot is pointed forward, but then your body's bladed, okay? And what that enables you to do is that enables you to transition again from a bladed stance into a square stance real quick, okay? So the left foot being pointed forward gives you an easier time to transition from a bladed stance to a square stance, and the bladed stance enables you to make your body a more narrow target for your opponent, okay? And the reason why this is a very important thing to cover is because this is exactly what Castano can take advantage of, okay? And again, the reason why is that, number one, if you have the hybrid stance and the feet is pointed forward, there is a tendency for you to move to the left, okay? And the reason why you want to move to the left is because you don't want to give up that blade. You don't want to give up that blade stance. You don't want to be squared up. And the only time you'll really square up is when you're being offensive. And again, this might be difficult to understand if you're not a boxer or if you're not someone who studies the game way too much, but I'm trying to explain it in the simplest way possible, okay? The reason why you would want to move to the left when you're an orthodox fighter and you have the hybrid stance is because you don't want to square up. When you are moving to the right, you are forced to square up because you need to take that L step. You need to square up. It's not an actual way of moving for an orthodox fighter. And again, Castano can take advantage of this because if you're in a bladed stance and you move to the left, okay, and if your foot is pointed forward, that also means that your face is not going to be turned all the way to the side. Which leads me to the best punch of Castano, in my opinion, which is the lead right hand. This is something that I think is an advantage for him because Charlo's stance is pretty good, okay? But the thing is that the pointed lead foot kind of makes his face a little more squared rather than all the way out, or rather than all the way to the side, okay? When you're bladed, your head is all the way to the side. So the hybrid stance kind of deletes that. The hybrid stance kind of takes that away, and now your head will be forced to go on the center. The only thing that's really bladed in the hybrid stance is going to be your upper body, okay? So you look at the stance of Spence, you look at the stance of Jermel Charlo, this is exactly what it looks like. Their head is straight, their head is squared up, their head is pointed towards their opponent, it's pointed forward, but their body is bladed, so it's a very weird position if you look at it, but it works because it keeps their body a narrow target while keeping their head forward and while keeping their lead foot pointed forward. And again, when they try to square up, when they become more offensive, that enables them to put a lot of rotation on those shots because they're not restricted by the blade. You look at Mayweather, whenever he throws the right hand, he doesn't really fully rotate his hips. The reason why is because he is restricted by the blade. He is restricted by his stance, and his stance is a little more to the side, okay? Now, I kind of want to talk about the pressure of Castano and the amount of punches that he throws in a round, and how I think this will affect the gas tank of Charlo. Now, again, if you look at the Harrison fight, the first one and then the second one, the reason why Charlo's gas tank looked amazing is because I'm not saying that Charlo doesn't have a good gas tank. He definitely does, okay? But he does it, or he has a better gas tank whenever his opponent is not as active. Why is that? Because he doesn't need to do all the movements necessary to defend himself whenever his opponent doesn't throw as many punches. The question now is, how are you going to deal with a guy who throws 80 to 100 punches a round, right? Even if it doesn't land, it takes a lot of energy out of you to defend those shots, and it takes a lot of energy for you to constantly duck down and constantly move your head. And although Charlo doesn't have a lot of head movement in his game, he does do it every once in a while. And most of the time, he slips inside, he ducks to the left side in order to plant, or in order to get a lot of load up from his front leg, and then from there he's gonna throw his power shots. That's what he does all the time. And if you're gonna look at this, both of them are very similar in the sense that they are front foot fighters, and they get a lot of load up from their legs. Neither of them can really throw a lot of punches on the back foot. Neither of them can really punch while moving back, and neither of them really likes to fight on the back foot. Okay, both of them have a lot of load up from their legs. The difference really is that Charlo doesn't throw as many punches as Castano, and that Charlo has more head movement than Castano. Castano is mostly just straight up, like a Maidana. He just has that high guard, which now leads me to my point, to my next point, which is the vulnerabilities of the high guard of Castano. This is where Charlo can have the advantage. Don't worry, guys, I'm gonna have my prediction later on. Just chill the F out. Just relax over there, and I'm gonna explain this one by one. Now, if you look at the high guard of Castano, it's a little bit more to the side. It's a little bit more to the side rather than covering up the center. Okay, and most of the shots that catches him, he's very similar to Chris Ariola, the one that Andrew Ruiz fought. Their high guard is a little bit more to the side, and they are very vulnerable to shots at the center, to shots that are coming right down the center. And we've seen this with his fight with, damn, what's the name of this guy? The last one that he fought in 2019, before he fought the Southpaw. We've seen that. We've seen how he got caught with those uppercuts. We've seen how he got caught with those jabs, which Charlo is really good at doing. You know, Charlo is really good at doing. But here's the dilemma of that. If Charlo decides to use this jab against Castano, Castano will use that lead right hand over the top. And what makes it easier is that whenever Charlo throws the jab, he usually circles to the left side. And that's going to bring the left side of his face closer to the lead right hand of Castano. And if he decides to pivot after he throws the jab, most likely he's going to get caught on the way out, because he doesn't really know how to move his lead foot out of the way, and he doesn't really know how to keep his head out of the way as he pivots. He mostly keeps it there. And again, look at my video. It's called Mistake When Escaping the Ropes. That's where I outline this. And Charlo has the same habit. He kind of pivots. It doesn't really take his head out of the center line, and then what happens is he gets caught with those right hands. He gets caught with those right hands. Now, the next one I want to speak on now is the lead right hand of Castano. And again, another reason why this is a big problem for Charlo, this is going to be a big problem for Charlo, is because he is trained mostly to defend the jab. And whenever his opponent throws a lead right hand, he mostly gets caught with it. And again, that's a result of the hybrid stance, the bladed body, and the squared foot, the squared head. That is a result of it, because it brings the face closer to the right hand. It is much easier to reach. And most of the time his hands are down. It doesn't really have the shoulder roll. And his guard is he kind of transitions. Again, the result of the hybrid stance is that you kind of transition from a high guard to a Philly shell. Okay, so you put your left hand up, and then you put it down. An example of this, Canelo Alvarez is going to have the high guard, and then it's going to go into a more of a Philly shell stance, and then it's going to go back to a high guard. Another fighter with a hybrid stance right there. That's another example. Okay, now let's move on to my prediction. Okay, I have it 70-30. 70% is that Charlo is going to knock out or stop Castano in the early rounds. And then 30% is Castano will outwork Charlo in the later rounds. The reason why I say that is because usually Castano becomes more durable as the fight goes on. Castano throws more punches as the fight goes on. And when he figures his opponent out, he usually knows how to hit his opponent without getting hit back. without getting hit back. And although he doesn't have the best head movement, he has a lot of ways to kind of go around his opponent. He has a lot of ways to keep his head away from the counter punches. He has a lot of ways to raise his hands up high and to use his high guard in order to block all the upcoming shots. So even though he's not the most slick fighter out there, he has pretty good fundamentals. He was a good amateur as well. So if it does go to a decision, I would definitely favor Castano to win that one. If it goes into an early knockout though, that would go into Charlo just because he has more of a one-punch KO power. I think Castano relies more on volume. Castano relies more on punches and bunches. And for that reason, I don't think he has that ability to really stop or knock out Charlo. He has the ability to overwhelm Charlo for sure. He has the ability to pressure Charlo and to trap him into the ropes, but he doesn't have that ability to knock him out with one punch. He doesn't have the ability to stop Charlo. He doesn't have the ability to get Charlo to shell up and then eventually hurt him, and then eventually Charlo will become unresponsive until the referee stops the fight. I don't think that will happen. And alright, that's my prediction on this fight. It's pretty close. I've only watched 2 fights of Charlo versus Rosario, and then Charlo versus Harrison, the second one. And then I've watched highlights of the first fight with Harrison too. And then for Castano, I've watched his fight with a Nigerian guy that he fought in 2019, and then I think the other one was Soto. I'm not sure, but it's the trainee of Abel Sanchez, which is also the trainer of Gennady Golovkin, the former trainer of Gennady Golovkin. I think it's Soto or Soto. Either way, that's a great fighter. That was a great test for Castano, and we've seen a lot of his flaws in that particular fight. He went the distance as well. So 70-30, I think Charlo will win by early knockout, but if not, there's a 30% chance that Castano will outwork him in the late rounds, and he will pressure him, he will overwhelm him. I don't think he will knock him out, but he'll definitely overwhelm him with volume, and he'll definitely he'll definitely take out a lot of Charlo's gas tank. So that's my opinion on that. Alright guys, that was it for this video. You may hear some chickens in the background because I'm currently in my relative's house, so definitely sorry about that. In the future videos, I'll probably shoot it in my condo unit, and I won't have to worry about this shit no more. But yeah, right now there's a lot of chickens in here. And definitely join me on Patreon. I mean, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Comment down below what you think of this fight. I'd give it Charlo around round 1 to round 8, TKO. But if not, Castano will outwork him in the late rounds. That's my opinion on that. See you guys soon, man. Peace.